knew Nick was going to do something.
Greetings and welcome to Mount Olympus. I am Hercules Invictus, and tonight I welcome you to the UFO entity Enigma. We continue with even more tales of the Venusians, and we have our esteemed panelists, Nick Curto, Tim Schwartz, Mark, and maybe, if we're lucky, Phyllis Brinkerhoff, and Brian Walker just signed in. So we will start with Nick Curto, who regaled us with tales of Balfour, and now is going to regale us with even more esoteric tidbits of Venusian information.
Thank you, Hercules. The Commander Balfour story is absolutely spellbinding. I have every book that I could find right now on the subject, and the more I read, and the validations that are coming in from people who have experienced him in some form is quite amazing, to say the least. And his mission, when he came to our planet, is never more timely than right now, with what's going on with Russia and Crimea and the United States, and then the other countries coming into this, and there's a threat never more so than nuclear weapons that are really on the brink of being launched. I mean, if you listen to some of these governments, it's really quite frightening, and a lot of people are really heading for the hills, literally, because it's just getting worse and worse. So I hope it's going to get better, like everyone else hopes it will. But the threat of nuclear war is really looming more in 2023, and this is a very big topic right now. And Balfour came to our planet to offer us an amazing deal. I'll call it a deal. And what his commission enabled him to offer us being every government in our planet, was that if we were to completely back off of all nuclear and atomic weaponry and research of any kind, to turn our backs on those sources of total destruction, and he and his consul felt as though we were on the brink of mass destruction. And that's when he came and said, we want to prevent that. And what we want to do here, for your sake as well as ours, and there's a story about that, is that we will offer you advanced medical knowledge so that you can live to be a good 500 like we do on our planet in very, very good health. We'll offer you new farming techniques so you can flee the world, and also new power sources so that there will never be another need for power. You will have all the power you could ever want. And it will not be in any way evasive to your planet. It would be very friendly to your planet. I can't think of a better deal than that. And so he landed with his crew right outside of Washington, D.C., and he was observed, the ship was observed by I believe it was two policemen who drew their pistols and approached him, the ship, and he came out looking like a friendly, really nice guy, a humanoid, and he had a silver outfit on and boots, but he was very friendly. And he said that I want to talk to the president, please. And they put him in a car, their car, and they brought him to the Pentagon for intensive, all kinds of questions that they wanted to ask. They asked to test his suit, which was very unusual. And interestingly enough, that silver suit he was able to make it bigger so he could easily get out of it. And they tested it and they couldn't destroy it. They tried laser, they tried everything you can imagine. It wouldn't rip or tear or anything. And there was no buttons or Velcro or anything, zippers. But when he wanted to put it back on, it was loose enough so he could put it on easily, and then it formed to his body. So it looked like a very well-tailored suit. Again, it was silver. that's an incredible unto itself. And then he was allowed, after intensive questions, to get into a car of some kind and go underneath the ground all the way to the White House. And the president, which was President Eisenhower, saw him, and they had quite a conversation. And what he said was, I am empowered to offer all these incredible advanced technologies, but all the governments and all the various power people must promise to back away completely from nuclear and atomic weaponry and anything to do with those with that. And so not only was he allowed to stay on our planet and right next to Washington, but he was allowed by the president to stay in the Pentagon, where he had a suite there. And from what I read, he wasn't in any way restricted to be at the Pentagon. He could move and go anywhere he wanted, which he did. And he didn't stay there for 1 month or 1 year. He stayed for 3 years, 3 years at the Pentagon, and with power enough to go anywhere he wanted. And his mission, again, was to tap into all the other governments and other major power sources that would have a decision to make if they would allow such a deal to be made. And at the end of that 3 years, and he worked his tail off to sell this amazing deal. Eisenhower said, unfortunately, we cannot accept that deal. So your answer is no.
Now, I must ask, so Valthor, again, he's become part of our folklore and our UFO lore because of his mission. And there are some who say that he's still active among us today. What is he doing today that's different than what he did at the dawn of his mission until his offer was refused?
Well, I think that he would still be doing monitoring of our planet. And boy, he must be glued to what's going on now, because it's never been worse than right now as far as threats by major governments for nuclear weaponry to be used. So what he was thinking way back when, and what he came for with, along with the consul that sent him here, is happening right now. So he's glued. I understand from all the writings that he visits our planet. He also has a place on the dark side of the moon, and also there's a space station that he also goes to, along with his home planet, which is deep in Venus. Also, that's really interesting that obviously Venus has got tremendous amounts of unfriendly atmosphere, but that's not where his civilization lives. He said it's deep, deep underground. So again, that's part of the story, but how interesting. So the answer to your question, Hercules, is very much alive. Again, those Venetians can live to be 500 years old and in very, very good health. Now, he looked in perfect health. I don't know if he said his age. I never read anything about that. I will look into that. But obviously, right now, it's just a focus of, look what they're doing now on this planet. Oh my God! So that's got to be part of his mission. And I have a feeling that we're going to be hearing from him. My group, Disclosure Network New York, actually did a first concentrated group effort to try to contact him. Now we weren't successful that time, but we're going to keep trying until we get him. We're empowered to do that.
And as I'm focused on Venus for the near and immediate future, we'll be following that up here. And thank you so much for sharing all that you've shared. And I look forward to getting your status reports on your attempts to contact Valthor.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the last part of that.
I look forward to getting updates on your attempts to contact Valiant Thor.
Absolutely. It's an incredible, it's a huge story, and it's got a lot of hope here. I mean, think of the concern and the love his civilization has for our planet and its population. I mean, that's a very, very loving gesture, and we need to understand that.
And in light of that gesture, at the end of everybody's presentation, when we're all done, before we wrap up, I'm going to ask everybody one question based on what they shared today. So
Right.
onwards. Next, we go to the one and only Tim Schwartz, who is the founder of Zontar Books and a longtime writer and researcher in the field of the strange and paranormal. Greetings, Tim. Thank you for being here tonight.
Hi, Hercules. Thank you for having me on tonight, and greetings to everybody else who are on the panel. And Nick, I would just like to make a brief comment about what you were saying about your group trying to establish a link with Val Thor. It reminds me of an experiment that the UFO writer and musician Timothy Good did one time when he was in New York, and he attempted such a similar contact in the hotel he was staying in. He went down into the lobby and he sat in, one of the chairs. And apparently this was a very nice and large hotel, with those very large, expansive lobbies. And he said that he sent out a telepathic communication for any extraterrestrial who happened to be in the area, if they would be willing to come by and visit him, and maybe give him some kind of subtle message that they had received his message. So he said that as he was sitting there, all of a sudden, a gentleman in a business suit and carrying a briefcase. He said this guy was tall, very light-skinned, blonde-haired, kind of a big, somewhat unusual shaped eyes, he said, came and sat down in the chair right next to him, opened up a newspaper, but apparently wasn't reading it. And Tim said that he asked mentally, okay, well, if you are coming due to my telepathic communication, give me a sign. And I can't remember offhand what the sign was, whether, just, turn and look at me or make a motion with your hand. But apparently this gentleman did just that for a couple of times, and then folded up his newspaper, got up and left.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. But I mean, and that's all there was to it, though. And I think Tim was hoping that there would be some kind of at least a conversation, but he was happy, with what he got.
That's
So,
a great story. That's an amazing story. And we have done other meditations. We used Dr. Stephen Greer's meditation in Central Park a few years ago, and there were a number of people with us. And we did have a ship, a triangular ship, come into our focus. And when it got over our head, we don't know how high it was. It probably was very, very high. It literally stopped for about 20 seconds, literally over our heads, and then continued, which we interpret as we heard you and we want to acknowledge. That was one of the highest points of my life so far, is having that experience with my group.
That's fascinating. Well, I mean, if I wish you the best of luck, and I really hope that you get a response
We're
from
trying, and we'll keep trying.
Valthor.
You'll be one of the first to know. Believe me.
Yeah, well, I look forward to that. Well, tonight I'm going to be talking about the contactee movement and associated with Venusians. And I want to take it slightly different than what I've talked about before, because I'm going to use a lot of information that is taken from the Swedish writer, investigator, and librarian, and I hope I pronounce his name right, Håkan Blomqvist. Now, he writes and covers a lot of cases that probably haven't gotten a lot of notice here in the West. He deals with a lot of Swedish cases, Danish, and European cases. You know, a lot of us are familiar with the American contactee movement, people like George Adamski and Howard Menger. But I think a lot of people would be surprised to know that the contactee movement was also very big, especially in Sweden and the Netherlands and throughout Europe. So one of the things that Hakim tries to talk about is, like, right now the usual and popular media image of an alien visitor is the small creature with the big black eyes, often referred to as the Grace. All right. And this was something that was really popularized by Whitley Strieber in his first book, which had that very iconic cover that drew a lot of people in with similar experiences. But now, we have to ask, have both the public and mainstream ufologists been misled in assuming that the Greys and similar entities to be actual and intelligent visitors? All right, because there appears now to be a reevaluation of the human-looking alien as the real visitors. Now, the human-looking alien being the aliens who claim to be from planets in our own solar system, Venus especially, but also including Mars and Jupiter and Saturn, which, as Nick pointed out, seems to be kind of really an almost old-fashioned type of idea, knowing what we do now about these planets, or at least the physical attributes of these planets. And one of the things that some of the contactees have pointed out is that our understanding of our reality, our universe, and the cosmos is lacking, extremely lacking, and that our universe is probably should be considered more like a hologram rather than a real physical three-dimensional. I mean, I know that's really difficult for us to wrap our heads around, but the concept is that that our universe is actually a projection, and I can't remember now if it's considered a one-dimensional or two-dimensional projection from a reality someplace else. All right. And because of that, we have to now bring in the esoteric tradition that has been considered along the lines of theosophy and Rosicrucians and some of the more other types of philosophy. One of the interesting things about the whole contactee movement is how much the contactees and the esoteric tradition have really kind of walked hand in hand, something that I think a lot of ufologists have either missed out on or deliberately ignored. All right, because you look at the messages that have been received by these contactees, especially the ones like I was referring to earlier by Hakim Bloomquist, is that, first of all, these beings have been with us on this planet for thousands of years, and it's almost questionable whether or not we could even call them aliens or extraterrestrials, because if they've been here on the planet with us for all that time.
Excellent point.
Yeah, are they really, extraterrestrials? I mean, it's just, it's kind of, semantics there, arguing back and forth. And, that's something that I bring out in our book, Mimics the Others Among Us, that these beings aren't just new visitors, who were attracted to the planet, as had been suggested by the early atomic testing, that took place in the late 1940s, because there have been a number of similar contactee types of cases that took place, say, as early, from my research, as far back as the 1920s and 30s. Probably there are some others that took place even before that we may never know about. But I think that the heavy emphasis right now on the big-eyed grays is a distraction from the possibility that the actual aliens, extraterrestrials, are human-looking, and that the grays are probably more of a bioengineered type of a robotic types of creatures that were left to do, or are left to do the dirty work. The interesting thing is why the change from the early contactees, who always reported seeing these very human looking beings, human enough that they could mingle with us, like I talked about at the beginning, that the experience that Tim Good had, or Val Thor, people like that. And now these beings are almost taken a back seat and letting these other things, do the work for them. Now, one of the things that Hakim Bloomquist suggests is that the early contactee movement was actually a test to see how people would react to contact with another intelligence. And again, this goes into the esoteric tradition, where people who are trying to learn the ways are constantly being tested by the masters. And it's almost as if this has been brought forth in a 20th, 21st century aspect, where the mystical aspect is gone and it's taken a more scientific path, so to speak. But this test was to show whether or not, first of all, that that people could accept this idea, and whether or not people who were contacted would be able to make use of the information given to them and not let it go to their head. A good example would be George Adamski. If his contact was real, all right, by beings who actually came from the places that they said that they came from, did it go to his head and he became egotistical and full of pride and, making money and possibly even making up a lot of the later contacts that he claimed that he had. And this is a situation that has presented itself with several other well-known contactees. Because the interesting thing is that the contactee movement definitely waned after the 1970s. So, was the test over with at that point? And have these beings gone on to do something else? Some of the contactees have claimed that they're now gone, completely gone, and that they've been replaced by other creatures. One of the interesting things, Hercules, that that I have heard before is that as the solar system revolves in the galaxy, we enter different fields of energy. With these different fields of energy come different intelligence, different beings, all right? So that even 50 years ago, we would be dealing with types of intelligence that are now gone because we have moved past their field of influence. All right. And again, this kind of goes into certain aspects of the esoteric tradition, which talks about fields of influence and how there are different times within the cycle of the earth that these beings present themselves. So, it could be that the original beings that we were in contact with, Valthor, people like that, are now gone. And we're now under the influence of a completely a new set of intelligence.
Some of the groups that remain, like for instance, Unarius.
Mhm.
And I've been in contact with Unarius and interacting with Unarius for over 3 decades now, probably more than that. Last time I checked, it was like 3 decades. They're still dealing with a lot of the same entities that they've been dealing with since they were founded. And some of the other contactee groups also, especially the neo-theosophical ones,
Mhm.
it's the same cast of characters. It's Kutumi and Moria and Lanto, and so the same names keep popping up repeatedly. So that you touched on some very important points, and some of them I intend on devoting entire episodes to. So thank you for bringing up all that information, because I think it's very, very important. And your connection with the esoteric traditions and their beliefs explain a lot of the UFO contactee literature like nothing else can.
Well, thank you, Hercules. I had a great time talking with you all tonight, and I look forward to hearing what everyone else has to say.
Thank you, sir. And now we're going to move to Mark Brinkeroff. Is Phyllis with us, Mark, or can we expect her feet or her hands popping up, or her words to illuminate what you're saying?
No, sadly, she's got migraine.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Take a migraine pill and just calm down. I love Tim. I love what you said. However, I disagree with many things we all think, because I am still in contact. I am a contactee from the 50s. And in the olden days with Tim, we had Harold Salkin, who was the person I met originally too. And Harold told me how he was the one who arranged for George Adamski to come to New York City for the first time. I never got to meet George Adamski, but I gotta say, intuitively, I felt he was trying to be sincere in the beginning, and then I got suspicious of pictures and things. I felt some were fake, because I could see a picture and I could tell it's fake. And I thought, oh, he probably did it like Howard Menger tried to make it show what I did and what I took a picture of. This is what I saw. But if you're going to do that, and as an artist, I said, if I'm ever doing that, I'm going to tell you, this is an illustration of what I saw. I'm not going to take photos and pass them as real, or do things like make up a photo or something. So I got a little suspicious at myself at times. And then there's other people like Orfeo Angelucci, books on that, and Dan Fry. Some of the photos I saw in Dan Fry's book didn't feel right. And when UFO investigators came to visit with me, SBI, the Scientific Bureau investigation in 1979, Pete Mazzola, who ran it, brought a stack of photos of UFOs like this, big stack of photos, all the old photos we know and recognize, plus any newer ones at that time. And he said, we got new computer technologies, and we're going to test these photos through it. So I said, for fun, can I just look at the pictures here? And he said, yeah, sure. So I said, I'm going to make a stack of what I sense is real and what I sense is not real. He says, go for it. That'll be fun. I'll separate them. So I just started back and forth. And he said, okay, I'm going to say this is the stack that you had that you said are not real. They're fake photos. And these are the real ones. So he took them to the new computer. About a week or so, he came back and showed us and talked with us and came over. He would come at 3 a.m. in the morning with his police cars. So he said, Mark, you're going to not freak. You're going to freak out. You're going to see what happened with these pictures. Every single one that you said was exactly right. He says, I was looking at them going, nah, this is a real photo. But no, the computer said it was faked. All the photos we thought from the 50s that looked real were fake, some of them, not all of them. But the ones that you recognize were, some of them mostly were fake. And I was like, oh my God, how'd that thing know this? He says, well, it could read very fine lines, super fine more than anything, if they were threads or anything hanging, or they sent up a garbage pail lid, things like that. So I just found that amazing. And the ones that are real are still the ones that we've seen today that are real. So from the magazine, from Look and all those magazines, there were some real ones there. The thing is, the contacts I have are part of my friends and crew. And I've met other beings who came to a lecture I gave in the 70s of upstate New York. So they're human looking. But the ones that I know, who I've met in the field the first time when I was 5 years old, they were like plus 8 feet tall. And they were very, like, I show everybody the pictures. This is one of them here, like big, tall people, about 8 feet and change, 9 feet tall. And they can't walk around New York unless there's about 7 feet they can cover it. But like we got Valiant Thor, who came in at 6 feet and change, at least. And the one I met in the park in 2015 was Balthon, and he came in almost 7 feet tall, and dematerialized when he left. And again, he looked young, like he looked like 25 years old. In telepathy, I felt, no, he's way older. So when we have Valiant Thor, who took on a human form body, physical density like we are here, I'm pretty sure Nick, I think he said he would be equivalent to about 100 and change or so of our age if he was on planet Earth. But he's not of our planet, and he's not of Venus. He visited Venus because he's from another level, another planet level. So their age groups can be anything from 1,000 years old, in Earth time, Earth thought. And they can transform themselves too. So they don't have to physically die and be buried. They will die and disappear or take their body form energy. This is how I know what's happened on the other side. And Nick and I had a fun conversation the other night talking about spacesuits, things that we wear. This is in space where I am coming from. These are one-piece outfits, and there's no seams, zippers, or any of that, or buttons. They take on your body form, but you can like get out of one just like this, pulling the collar open and just stepping out. Or you could do this and it'll open right in front of your, down your seam in front of your crotch, and you can just step out of it. You can, or come out of the side. You could do like one of these. They're just made that way. They're like memory fabrics, or like we have memory metals now here. But when I was a child, I told my dad about memory metal on ships that they will take and fuse right back together, and you'll never see a seam. And that happened after I saw The Day the Earth Stood Still, the original movie, when I was about 5. I said, that's exactly what we have. We have these. This is what I was talking to my father. So the spacesuits are aligned with different fabric frequency, generating frequency threadings. It's sort of, we think of threads. They're frequencied up. So there's a protection barrier. They can make your body, the density and feeling you feel here on this planet, right here where we are, if we're cold or hot, it'll adjust to your body and make you feel at the temperature you feel comfortable at. If you need to do some work, let's say around the ship, like Nick and I were talking, we're going to go out and fix that on the ship and land it. The spacesuit will become baggy enough. You just think it, you need the looser fit, like overalls, and it'll become looser for you. Normally they kind of form to the body enough. They're not going to get detailed, really totally detailed. But the thing is, they sometimes look like that. And I met people who, they're passed on now, but they had taken photographs of a UFO that opened up a doorway and people were staying in the door. I didn't get a photo of it. And I wish I did, because they never got the film. Something happened to the film. And Pete Mazzola wanted to get the film, and I was trying to get it for him. Even pay the people money to let us borrow the film and get it back to you, like that. The forms were over 12 people standing in the doorway, like behind each other. And in the front, watching the screen, first 2 people on the left side were talking with each other, and you got the feeling they were telepathically talking, pointing and doing that, pointing outside the door, which opened up a hatched door, big long door. There were women and men. They had golden skin. They were beautiful. And the women who took the picture said, "Mark, I thought they were naked." I said, "Oh no, they're wearing gold spacesuits." that are body formed fitting. A little bit of a belt, like I show here, slight belting here. That is just, that's another way of getting out of the suits. The belts are not belts, they're with the suit. And some of the boots are with the suit attached. Everything looks attached. Sometimes you can have boots you can put on too. They have different types of suits. So I said to her, the ladies, I said, no, this is golden space suits and they're golden tan skin, just reflected like that. They threw a cylinder out, a big long cylinder out of the door, and it went into the grass. They went back when they found this film, they went back to the area looking through the grass and found nothing. I said, well, that was because they were on their dimensional space. Your camera picked it up. So it's on the dimension, like a probe, like a navigator thing. There is not, space is not a hologram. And I know people think it's a die hold or a die bold or whatever the thing, computer of God or whatever. It's not that at all. And when you're in space and you're traveling in it, it's all 3D. It's just like three-dimensional on our plane. This is where we are. This is our plane, this universe that we're in our galaxy. I've been through nebulas and I've been through, went to Venus, I've been to Saturn, seen the back of the moon, been in the moon before I came here to this planet. So it's been a big, it's like it's like a base, but it's also a spaceship, the moon, but it's ancient. So ancient was brought in here from another area in galaxies. Saturn's, all the people on the planets that are physical like us are living within the moons of the planets mostly that we know of. Mars, no, Mars they have underground too. But a lot of Saturn's, Titan and other moons of Jupiter also have people in them as bases and stuff, and they do live there. So, and in Venus, I've been to Venus. I used to live on it for a little while, like you would take a vacation. This is ancient times from a seventh dimensional level on the first plane. You're a high Ethereal body form again, kind of look like this or whatever color here you want. And I worked there, taught people about how to connect to these scout ships telepathically, because I can tell you about scout ships. It'll be fun to hear in another show, but you got to link up with them. And they almost are like you would rent a car today. You would sign your papers and this car is yours today to use with the keys. In their way, it's when we're working with things, with ships, you connect with the ship, which has a consciousness like a plant, and it connects with you in that way. And you are now going to be the navigator and the commander of that ship, or have another person with you and all that. So it's fun. I won't go into it, but that's what we were doing, training for that. I would show people how to train for that.
So what advice would you have for Nick? Because Nick is trying to contact Val and his crew,
yeah,
on the Victory 1.
Yeah, Vector 1. Yeah,
Vector 1, I'm sorry.
Vector.
So what would you say to Nick to increase his chances of success in that noble endeavor?
I can only tell you what Valiant Thor told me when I went out to go check on him out of body, because to come to this planet, when I came here, I had to go through some councils, and he was on one of the councils, the Venusian council there that was for the solar system. So I've been friends with him from the other side, and he came to me when I was 7 years old and helped me with something that happened to me, carried me to my parents' house and put me on the bed, and stood at the end of the event till I woke up, because I had went off out of body. I was out of body on a ship, actually. So when I saw him, he looked the way he looks today in all those pictures you've seen. And when he left our house to go, because he saw me, he said, oh, you're gonna be okay now. And he left to go out of the house. My mother told me that he told her his name was Val. So that's the closest I got. He carried me and took me in his car that suddenly just appeared coming around the corner for my cousin to help me. That's an old story. That's a long time ago. That was 1960.
And we would definitely hear that story on another day.
Yes, that's another day. But here for this, Valiant Thor told me he's not a person that, and his crew are not channeling. They don't do that. Channeling is dangerous. And I try to tell people to watch out. If you don't know how to protect yourself, the tricksters are all around. And when people have channeled and I've watched them, I see who they're talking to. I see auras, I see the spirit people. And I went up to the person there. I said, who are you trying to contact? Let's say Master Moria or somebody. And they go, yeah. I said, well, that's not who was standing by you. It was a woman, trickster, a man, or trickster, not of this planet or of this planet. It doesn't matter. There are fallen people. There are people that are trapped on walking the planes here who didn't leave to get to the higher realms. and they just play games with people. And I've heard them talking and everything. I'll be so and so today. You be that person. We got to be really careful. Really bless yourselves. I don't care what you're doing, but you better be protected from those tricksters. You have to blast them out with your energy field as well. That's why I don't go into channeling. Never did channel, because I see them and I hear them. But the thing is I don't channel. So the best thing is, I would say, through contact, try to make out-of-body contact first with Valiant Thor. Really focus on him. Have his photograph. If you have anything that had his signature on it, that he ever wrote anything, have that with the photo, put it near the side of your bed. Contemplate and concentrate on Valiant Thor and his crew, and just focus it, and then say, thy will, not mine, because you don't want to force your will on anyone. Just say, when the time is right, please come to me and visit me, and take me to the ship out of body above here in America, because he works around there too. But he also told me he is working on the earth, and this is only a few months ago, about 5 months ago. He said, I work around the earth, but I'm not standing out. Like, he's not going, hi. He doesn't do that. So he's incognito in a way, but he's working with the good guy military that we got going here. And then he goes back and forth. So he does still have his ship. When he comes in, he will have a ship somewhere. The Vector 1 will land someplace. Again, invisible dimensional plane that they will transform it to. Some people said, oh, it's solid and visible like this, but here, they can do that with the craft too. So remember the old Star Trek when they landed in the park, that kind of thing. But they don't have to do that. The ships can be in the next frequency, invisible to us, but right there, and we're telepathic with them.
Thank you very much, Mark. As always, you're a fountainhead of information, and you offer a very unique perspective to our conversation. So thank you.
You're welcome, guys.
And last but not least, in the panel, we have Brian Walker. And Brian is the keeper of cinematic lore, including cinematic lore about outer space. And a lot has been filmed about Venus. Like today, when I was doing my research, I found vampire vixens from Venus. Now I have to see that. And of course, other Queen of Outer Space, I believe, is about the Venusians. So you're going to introduce us to more of this modern mythology and folklore.
And I want to talk about specifically two public domain films so that any of us can watch them from anywhere. The first one is First Spaceship on Venus, which really has an interesting production history. It was created in 1960. And it was a very laborious process. For the East, it was done by an East German Polish, I should say, kind of agreement, I suppose. Initially, the East German director had reached out to some French investors because he wanted to make a movie that would sort of define the genre, for the East Germans, and he needed money to do that. And the East German government looked down, or sort of frowned upon, having sort of a Western influence in the film. So that was nixed. But initially, the French investors had dangled Yves Montand and his wife, Simone Signoret, who Simone Signoret was a top-notch actress, very well respected. She had a much better acting reputation than her husband. Not that he was a terrible actor, but she was just an excellent actress. However, I don't know that Yves Montand and Simone Signoret were ever told that they might be starring in First Spaceship on Venus. I have a feeling they may have turned it down if they had been offered that. But Yoko Tani, who is a Japanese actress whom you can see in a lot of drive-in films in the 50s and 60s, is the main star of the film. The original cut of the East German film is about 93 minutes. But in 1962, a Poverty Row studio, which was pretty new at the time, called Crown International Studios, picked it up and put it on a double bill with First Spaceship on Venus as at the top of the double bill. for drive-in audiences in 1962, and it made a ton of money for Crown International. And Crown International, like I said, was struggling. They'd only put out a few films, and typically what Crown did was they would scoop up the rights to a movie. Therefore, if you look at Crown International's filmography, the films that they released to theaters, you can find a variety of different filmmakers. Ed Wood is one of them. We talked about Ed Wood just last week, Hercules. Crown International released Orgy of the Dead in 1965, which is it's nicely shot. It's not a great movie though. There's a sort of a striptease element running all the way through it, and there's Criswell and some other ghouls here and there. It doesn't have a whole lot of linear meaning or thought behind it, but it is a well shot film. They also did a notorious B movie called The Creeping Terror. That's skin-peelingly bad. However, it's a lot of fun to watch, and I actually saw it during it was called the Worst Film Festival when I was a freshman in college. That was one of the movies that they showed, and indeed, it is one of the worst movies I've ever seen. So it's interesting that Crown International, was able to get a hold very cheaply, might I add, because of the exchange rates in the early '60s at the time for this film, because this film is very high quality. It was shot in a widescreen process that was unknown in East Germany before then. It's beautifully photographed, well acted. The model sequences look very good. Just a well done film, which is not something you usually saw with a Crown International insignia at the very beginning of the film. Another one I wanted to talk about, which has a really checkered past, is Voyage to the Prehistoric Planet and its sister film, Voyage to oh gosh, I'm going to trip this up. I'm going to have to read it. Voyage to the Planet of the Prehistoric Women. Okay. Or Voyage to the Planet of the Prepositional Phrase, as it may be. But starting off with the previous title, Voyage to the Prehistoric Planet, this was released directly to television in a syndication package by American International Pictures in 1965. Roger Corman had obtained the rights to a movie that had been shot in Russia in the early 60s, 1962, I believe, called Planet of Storms. There again, Corman picked up the American rights to the film pretty cheaply. Instead of just dubbing it and releasing it as it was, he decided to shoot some wraparound sequences and edit them in. The only existing copies that I can find of this movie are terrible. The color is all blown out. In theory, it was shot in color, but you can't tell it these days if you look at the public domain copy or anything on YouTube. But these other sequences are matched up to it pretty well. Basil Rathbone is in a series of sequences that were shot by Curtis Harrington, and Faith Demerge, a great actress from the 1950s who did. She's the star of This Island Earth, for example. Unfortunately, by the '60s, was down to making films like this. Her scenes were shot in just one day, as were Basil Rathbone's. And unfortunately, Basil Rathbone and Faith Demerge never meet. Their scenes are shot. If you want to see them conversing, it's all done electronically because they're never together in a scene. That's how he shot it so quickly. Curtis Harrington, the director of the inserted scenes, this was an early directorial effort for him, but he went on to make some interesting films. He did a lot of horror and science fiction in the 1960s and 1970s. As a matter of fact, as you probably know, actress Piper Laurie passed away just yesterday morning. He directed a film with one of her horror films called Ruby. It was released in 1977, and it's a great drive-in horror film. And you'd think that coming off of Carrie just the year before, she would have been able to secure something maybe a little more upscale than a movie with Stuart Whitman. But Curtis Harrington did a lot of maybe inexpensive. They were mostly B's. Did a lot of horror TV movies like Killer Bees with Gloria Swanson. He also did What's the Matter with Helen, which is actually a theatrically released film. It's a horror film from 1971 with Debbie Reynolds, and unusual to see her in a horror film. Shelley Winters, not so unusual to see in a horror film. Dennis Weaver and Pamela Ferdin, who was a child actress in the early 70s, one of note. Very popular, worked very often until she became an adult, was able to quit acting because she didn't like doing it. Anyway, Voyage to the Prehistoric Planet, like I said, was released directly into an American International syndication package for movies that they had put together. And it just sort of filled a void. And that's why very, very little was spent by Corman and his production company on the wraparound sequences. They were shot very quickly and edited in. The dubbing's not done badly, however. Corman did an okay job with the dubbing. Now, 2 years later, in 1967, the up-and-coming director at the time, Peter Bogdanovich, who would later go on to make some fantastic films. He's the director of one of my favorite films, What's Up, Doc, from 1972, with Ryan O'Neal and Barbra Streisand. But just a few years beforehand, he was directing Mamie Van Doren on a beach as a Venusian. And oftentimes, actresses, when they've sort of hit the lowest of the low, refuse to talk about a certain role that they've had in the film. Interestingly, Mamie Van Doren talks about shooting some of the wraparound sequences with Peter Bogdanovich, whom she doesn't appear to like a whole lot in what, but who's to say what went on? However, their scenes are shot very quickly, and because it was so wretchedly inexpensive, they weren't even given dialogue. All of their dialogue is dubbed in afterward. They communicate telepathically, but they never have to move their lips, so no dubbing has to be done. If you think about it, pretty smart, because you only have about a day's worth of work. On the other hand, it doesn't do a whole lot for the movie. It's not. I did make it through it again, but it is not that interesting of a film to watch, sadly enough. It is great to see Mamie Van Doren in it. Apparently, whoever was doing the costume for the film was really thrown off, because the Venusians' costumes are these sort of skin-tight pants with clamshells as a sort of chest covering. And they had trouble finding clamshells big enough for Mamie. And this is according to Mamie Van Doren. And if you watch it, I guess I could see the point. The interesting thing about this movie is that Del Tenney's wife, Margot Hartman, and Del Tenney did some early 60s drive-in films, such as The Horror of Party Beach, which is a great title. Movie's not bad either. He did The Curse of the Living Corpse, which is a great title and not a bad movie. And he did Satan in High Heels, a few other things in his short career. And his wife was sort of she later in life became a society matron, but when she was young, wanted to be an actress, and Del Tenney wanted to be an actor. And it's odd to see her kind of this late into her career. I thought she had retired sort of in the early 60s. So it's odd to see her coming out of retirement for this. And this is not a good role to go out on. Yeah, usually you want to leave high, not low. But like I said, it's interesting that Mamie Van Doren has very clear remembrances of making this film. And they weren't pleasant ones, I don't believe. for her. I think she was at a kind of a rough patch in her career and her life at that time, but a check's a check.
And we only have a couple of minutes for Voyage to the Planet of Prehistoric Women, or some such.
Well, that's the film with Mamie Van Doren and
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
that is
Misunderstood.
Voyage to the Planet of the Prehistoric Women. It's the same film. Peter Bogdanovich took the edited version from 1965, which is Voyage to the Prehistoric Planet, pulled out the sequences that Curtis Harrington had shot with Basil Rathbone and Faith Demerge, and then inserted the sequences with Mamie Van Doren and Margot Hartman and a number of other actresses whom I'm not familiar with. Those two I am very familiar with, however.
And that is not an uncommon practice. I've seen several films like that, where basically there were other films with footage removed and other footage added, and they became brand new films.
And the two Poverty Row studios that did that most often were American International, hello, Miss Tippy, which released both Voyage to the Prehistoric Planet and Voyage to the Planet of the Prehistoric Women into syndication packages in the 60s.
Thank you.
Crown International distributed First Spaceship on these.
Thank you, Brian. That is always very awesome, and your knowledge is encyclopedic and intense and extensive. We don't have time for the question I was going to post to everybody, so we'll leave that for another panel. But if everybody could share their contact information, that would be incredibly awesome. Brian, where can people go to find you and your world and immerse themselves in it?
Go to briansdrive-in-theater.com using your favorite browser. And if you want to interact with me on social media, the only place you need to go is Facebook. Run a search for Brian's Drive-In Theater and I'll pop up.
And Brian has two of his own shows on our channel, Brian's Drive-In Theater, one of them which is, I believe, later this week.
Yes.
He's also a guest on the Sword and Sandal Cinema rotations, as is Nick. And he is also a panelist, as he is doing right now in our science fiction-y UFO outer space exploration. So thank you very much again, Brian.
Thank you.
Tim, how can people find you in your universe? And what's up and coming from Zontar Press?
Well, you can find all of my books on Amazon.com. Our most recent book is called Mimics: The Others Among Us. And we're working on a new book currently. You're going to provide us a chapter, Hercules. I'm keeping it a secret on the down low right now on just what the topic is, but we'll be able to talk about that soon. My website is conspiracyjournal.com. I really need to update it, but I mean, if you want to email me or, find links to a lot of the books that I did and some of the other people who worked for Tim Beckley, go there and you'll find all the proper links. And I'm also the co-host on the Paracast with Gene Steinberg, which you can find that at the website theparacast.com.
Thank you so very much, sir. As always, a pleasure and an honor to have you here.
Thank you.
Mark Brinkerhoff, how can people enter your world, which is alive with the things that most people read about and fantasize about, and you're living? So how can people enter your world and experience it?
Thanks. Thank you so much, Hercules, for having me. Well, we got nature spirits in galore. So you can get me at intergalacticmission.com. etuniversalzone.com and markbrinkerhoff.com. It's the art site where you'll see animals and art and all. We're working on about 3 books right now. Working on a major one, the symbols. We're also working on a nature spirits book with photographs I've taken and illustration, and another book on a different one. I won't say the name because it's funky. It's funny, but I wrote it years ago, but we put it aside, and then we thought, we should bring it back. Maybe we will put it out. And you can get me at the email that's there. It's Mark, M-E-R-C, Brinkerhoff, BRINKERHOFF yahoo.com. That's on the same email on all of them. And I do consultations, angelic, spiritual, whatever, past life, whatever you need. I can tune into them and see them with a photograph or whatever people send a photograph or come in person here to me. That's what I
Thank
do.
you very much. And please let Phyllis know that we missed her and that we hope that she feels much better very soon.
I'm sure she'll be better soon. She's resting. Thank you.
And Nick Curto, the man of many talents, artist, songwriter, author, and organization starter. What is new and exciting in your world, and how can people access it? Nick, you're muted again.
Yep, there we go. Sorry. There's a lot going on right now. There really is. As you know, we're going to be doing at least once a month a contact effort for Commander Valthor. And if anyone would like to join us, it will be online. It will be on a Zoom meeting. And I'm going to give you my email address to everyone, and let me know if you'd like to participate in that. The first one's going to be the third Wednesday of the month, and it will go from 7:30 to 9 o'clock. And so my email address is NICKNYNY1, and that's the numeral 1 at gmail.com. Again, Nick NYNY1 at gmail.com. I'd be happy to answer any question or welcome your comments, of course. And again, if you're interested in sharing a contact to try to get Valthor, join us. Absolutely, you're more than welcome.
Thank you very much. And before we wrap up, you also have an art exhibit coming soon. I heard you talking about that the other day.
I'm sorry,
Your art exhibit.
I'm not here. I'm sorry.
Your art exhibit. I heard you talk.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, we got about right now 50 images. There'll be 50 images in there. I'm very excited about this. And I think that it's going to create a lot of buzz because it's highly comical, very political, and a lot of fun. And in many ways, there's going to be 2 products that we're developing for the people to get at the gallery, and we'll have more information as we go. But right now, we do have the 50 images done, so that's a big step in the right direction. And again, that was based on a dream I had about a year ago that someone tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Nick, do this." And I'm doing it. Yes, sir. So that's coming along. Thanks for asking. And my song is also in development right now. And probably within the next month, we'll go to the studio and record it.
We will celebrate it here.
Wake Up, Fight Back. Again, Wake Up, Fight Back. And it's an informational rock song. So that's going on.
And we will celebrate it here as we have all of your creative endeavors. Thank you to everybody. Thank you for taking time to be here. I enjoy speaking with all of you separately and together. And again, I thank you very much for being here. And thanks to all who are watching. Good night, everybody.
Night.